China is expanding its nuclear arsenal. If you have been reading the headlines today, then you already know this. The question that we are asking tonight is, which country is China's arsenal aimed at? SIPRI, or the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, has released its annual report. This report points at China's growing nuclear arsenal. SIPRI says China's nuclear stockpile has grown from 410 warheads to 500 warheads. This is between last year and this year. Meaning, in just a year, China has added 90 warheads to its nuclear stockpile. And what's more, the data was last collected in January 2024. Who knows how many more nuclear warheads China actually added to its cache in the last 5 months? Why is China adding to its nuclear arsenal, you ask? Which country is this buildup really aimed at? You see, China has a dispute with almost every neighbor. China shares borders with 14 countries. It has disputes with almost all of them. This is China, the world's second largest country, with a humongous appetite for more land. It claims all of Taiwan. It is fighting with the Philippines over the Scarborough Reef and the Spratly Islands. These islands are in the South China Sea, and China claims nearly all of this vast water body through its 10-dash line. It has disputes with several countries over claims in the South China Sea. I'm talking about Vietnam, Brunei, Malaysia. China has also staked claim on a rock in the Yellow Sea called the Socotra Rock. This rock, by the way, is some 4.6 meters below the sea level. Also, South Korea claims that the Socotra Rock falls within Seoul's exclusive economic zone. But China wants it. And China also has disputes with Japan over the Senkaku Islands. These islands are in the East China Sea. China has engaged Indonesia as well in a dispute over Natuna Islands. China claims the Paracel Islands and is fighting Vietnam over it. China has an unresolved conflict with North Korea in the Sea of Japan. It has unsettled border issues with Bhutan. China has encroached upon around 36 hectares of Nepalese land. China even had a border dispute with Russia. The two countries share a 4,200-kilometer-long border. There were border clashes in 1969. China has disputes with India over land along the Himalayas. So in which of these disputed areas is China planning to fire a nuclear weapon? The SIPRI report says that for the first time, China has placed some of its nuclear warheads in a state of quote-unquote high operational alert. Let me say that again, high operational alert. For the first time, China has kept its nuclear warheads loaded on missiles. It has deployed at least 24 nuclear warheads. But then, who are these nuclear warheads aimed at? And where exactly are they stationed and pointed at? There is no way of knowing really, but we highly doubt China has put its warheads on alert for a smaller non-nuclear country. Look at what's going on in the South China Sea. Chinese maritime militia and Coast Guard are jointly harassing a country. We will be telling you all about it later on in the show. What you need to know at this point is China is highly unlikely to use a nuclear weapon for a smaller non-nuclear country that it can tackle using conventional firepower. Also, China claims it will not use or threaten to use nuclear weapons against a non-nuclear weapon state or against a nuclear weapon-free zone. The Philippines, remember, is not a nuclear-armed state. Neither are Japan, Vietnam, Malaysia, Singapore, Brunei, or any of the countries China has disputes with at sea. So then we are back to that question, who are the nuclear weapons for? Russia? China, you see, has unresolved issues with Russia. But will Beijing actually fire a nuclear weapon towards Russia is the question. The Chinese President Xi Jinping has called his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin his best friend. The two countries have become extremely close since the start of the Ukraine war. Putin was in Beijing in the month of May itself. He met his dear friend Xi. The two leaders released a joint statement. It read, and I'm quoting, "There can be winners in a nuclear war, and it should never be fought." And still, China is expanding its arsenal. And Russia continues to have the world's most nuclear warheads. The latest SIPRI report puts the number at 4,380. Will they ever use it against each other? Not until things drastically change. So are China's nuclear weapons for America? There is no doubt that the US is likely to top China's list of adversaries. But then here's the thing. China will not dare to fire a nuclear weapon at America. And I will tell you why. You see, while Chinese nuclear capability may be expanding, it is still no match for America's nuclear might. The US has over 3,700 nuclear warheads. That's over 7 times of what Beijing has. In short, China will be wiped out if it fires a nuke at the United States. So then are these weapons for India? China is believed to have significantly improved its theater nuclear systems. These are systems meant to target immediate neighbors or forces in its vicinity. Beijing has procured and also developed a range of shorter range nuclear weapons. The number of delivery vehicles also has been increased. Tensions have escalated along the Himalayas. On the 15th of June 2020, Indian and Chinese troops clashed in Galwan. Some 300 PLA troops attacked Indian soldiers with clubs wrapped in barbed wire and nails. 20 Indian soldiers died. China said its troops sustained minor injuries. Estimates saying the number could be anything between 38 and 45. In the seas as well, China is provoking India. We have spoken at length about Chinese construction at a Maldivian atoll close to India. Tensions are rising with India. So is the Chinese nuclear force India-centric. China's nuclear buildup also appears to correspond with the rising geopolitical tensions, by the way. China watchers saying for years, China maintained a nuclear arsenal of about 200 warheads, but now China is very quickly adding to its nuclear firepower. What was the trigger? Was it the Galwan skirmish or India's investment in border areas? In 2023, China appointed a new chief of its nuclear arsenal. By 2027, China is expected to have 700 nuclear warheads. And by the end of this decade, that number would have crossed 1,000. In short, China is increasing its ability to inflict damage. What signal is China really trying to send out then? Is China trying to use the increased stockpile as a political weapon to arm to its neighbors, grab more land, and unilaterally change the status quo in the disputed areas? Or is the plan even more vicious? If you ask Beijing, it will tell you that China is committed to a defensive nuclear strategy. In other words, China swears by a no first use policy. But then can you take China by its face value? And what does all of this mean for India? Increased preparedness. New Delhi is not blind to Chinese design, and the SIPRI report also makes it amply clear. It points one thing very clearly, that while Pakistan remains the focus of India's nuclear deterrence, New Delhi is placing growing emphasis on weapons capable of reaching targets throughout China. How many nuclear warheads does India have? 172, says SIPRI. For the longest time, India maintained a no first use nuclear policy. But in the recent years, India has made it clear that the country's nuclear policy will also, quote unquote, depend on the circumstances. This is what India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh said during his visit to Pokhran in 2019. To stay up to speed with the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.